Things keep happening exactly the same way, as if the universe is trying to remind me of something I agreed to long before I was born.
There is a number that does not belong here. Not in your phone's clock, not on license plates, not in any ordinary context of your waking world. But it keeps showing up anyway. 2301. And if you've noticed it, really noticed it, not just as a time, not just as random digits, but as something that feels out of place, something that lingers in your chest like static in the air after a lightning storm, then you are not here by accident. This number isn't a message from this reality. It's a memory from a version of Earth that collapsed, one that your soul remembers, even when your mind forgets. A version of your life that ended before it began. Why would you still be receiving signals from a timeline that no longer exists? Because, dear listener, you didn't let go. Not fully, not spiritually, not cosmically. Let that sit with you for a second. What if the thing you've called déjà vu your whole life, those flickers, those sudden, overwhelming senses of familiarity in unfamiliar moments, about something you'd already lived, but something you were supposed to live, but didn't? 2301 is not just a divine number. It is a residual code, a timestamp from a parallel event that marked your crossing point between two worlds, the one you left behind and the one you're surviving now. And if you carry the signs, the letter M etched like destiny into your palm, the perfect crescent moon that curves like a question, then this message is not entertainment. It is extraction. We're not just decoding a number. We're tracing the echo of a decision you never consciously made, but your soul did. A decision to leave behind the world that couldn't contain you. Imagine this, a version of Earth that evolved just slightly differently, where the structures of society bent 1 degree in a different direction. The love that never reached you, the path you never took, the person you never became, yet still remember in dreams. 2301 was the timestamp of the final moment of that Earth, its silence, the instant everything froze and you were moved, not with your feet, not with your body, but your spirit. You see, some chosen ones weren't born into this Earth. They were inserted, migrated, rethreaded into a surviving timeline because they carried frequency codes that were never meant to be lost. You feel it, don't you? That persistent tension between what is and what was supposed to be. That constant spiritual hum of being in the wrong place, wrong time. Yet somehow still right. It's because you brought blueprints from a collapsed version of reality into this one, and they don't match. But they're not mistakes, they're maps. 2301 appears when your spiritual GPS pings the old coordinates, not to confuse you, but to awaken you. What if the Mandela effect wasn't just a mass memory error? What if it's proof? Proof that something changed, and metaphorically or literally. That time marked the final transmission before silence. And you, my friend, weren't supposed to make it through. Yet here you are, not as a mistake, but as a messenger. That's why the lines on your hand are different. Why the letter M forms without intention, because it was marked as part of your transfer. And the crescent moon? That's the wound left behind when your soul was surgically pulled from one frequency field into another. Scars don't always hurt, but they always remember. You may be asking, why me? Because your consciousness held enough density to carry the data, enough light to preserve the code, and enough purpose to anchor it into the soil of this version of Earth. That's why things feel off, why clocks glitch, why animals sense you, why electricity bends around your presence, why you're drawn to lost things, old things, forgotten things, because you are one. Let's pause and ask a question. Information from a dead world? There are only two reasons. 1. To complete what wasn't finished. 2. To prevent it from happening again. If you're seeing 2301, it means you were sent back. Not from the past, but from a parallel disintegration. You hold patterns, blueprints, and intuitive alignments that don't match anything in your current environment. Yet somehow, your presence here activates dormant things in others. You are a carrier, a seed of the undone. 2301 is a crack in the cosmic firewall. It slips through algorithms, digital clocks, car plates, addresses, transaction IDs, not because it wants your attention, but because you were supposed to forget it. And yet you didn't. That's the first sign you're chosen. Not chosen to lead in the worldly sense. Chosen to remember what others can't. Chosen to witness what others deny. Chosen to feel what doesn't belong. Surroundings are out of sync with your own life. You're not broken. You're coded. That strange sadness you can't explain. That nostalgia for something you never experienced. That unbearable longing for something just outside memory. Those are not emotions. They're signals. Residual vibrations from a decision made at the soul level. To return, with awareness, to a reality you didn't choose, but chose you. The number 2301 isn't meant for the curious. It's not a trend. It's a recall alert. For the ones with the letter M, it will feel like an alarm. For those with the crescent moon on the palm, it will feel like an ache. For the ones with both, it will feel like destiny cracking open. And that's why this message matters, why this channel exists. You see, most platforms cater to distraction, noise, loops. But this space right here is a tool for clarity. Not for followers, but for forerunners. You are lost. It's because you've been delayed, held in a holding pattern by systems that feared what you remember, what you carried, what you're still able to unlock. That's what 2301 means. You were part of a different story, one that ended before it began, but your soul refused the ending, and so it brought the beginning here. The old world froze at 2301, but you remained warm, you remained aware, and you remained coded with the mission to never let that collapse happen again. Before we go deeper, I want to take a moment to speak to you, not just as the voice behind this channel, but as another soul navigating these strange alignments. If what you're hearing feels familiar, if you felt a quiet yes building in your chest, if the mention of 2301, the M on your palm, or the crescent you discovered years ago triggered something more than curiosity, then I want to ask something from the heart. Please subscribe to this channel, but because this space is a signal tower for those like you, for those who still carry the codes, still dream in fractures, still see things that others call coincidence, but you know deeply are patterned. And while you're here, I'd love to know something from you, personally. What's one code, one dream, one number, or moment that's followed you, haunted you even, that you've never dared to speak out loud? What would you like us to decode together? Leave it in the comments. This channel doesn't just speak to you. It listens, because truth doesn't arrive in isolation. It lands where it's welcomed. And you're welcome here, always. Now, let's return to the signal. Here's the strange part. Most people assume that if something ends, it disappears completely. That when a world collapses, all its structures, memories, and energy vanish into a void. But energy doesn't delete, it displaces. And frequency doesn't vanish, it reroutes. That's how 2301 timeline that reached critical failure. A version of reality that couldn't hold its own weight, maybe due to spiritual corruption, maybe due to imbalance, maybe because those meant to awaken stayed asleep. Whatever the cause, it fell. But not everything inside it did. Some consciousness was too luminous, too mission-driven, too memory-bound to fall with it. That consciousness was you. And what no one tells you is that when a timeline ends, the souls at the edge of awakening are given two options: dissolve or divert. You chose to divert, but that choice left scars. You might have noticed sudden sadness during moments of joy, a pull to places you've never visited but feel anciently connected to, flashes of memory from lives that don't make sense in your current family history, a strange relationship with clocks, especially digital ones. Seeing 2301 not just as a time, but as a reminder. These are not glitches in your psyche. They're evidence of bleed-through. Through the firewall, with fragments of its original instructions still intact. That's why your presence seems to agitate certain people. Why strangers feel either instantly connected to you or irrationally disturbed by your existence. They don't see what you are. They feel what you survived. You're the message they weren't ready to receive, and 2301 is the timestamp on your spiritual envelope. Let's talk about the M. It's not simply a coincidence. It's not just a cluster of lines formed by chance. It's a spiritual imprint, a seal left by the crossing. When you moved through the firewall between timelines, your essence had to be encoded to survive the transit. And so, the M was imprinted as a marker, an ID badge of sorts, not to label you, but to help you recognize yourself when amnesia tried to settle in. It wasn't for others. It was for the moment you'd eventually look at your hand and feel it looking back. As for the crescent moon, that's not just a memory arc, the shape of the tear in the veil through which you entered. You didn't arrive here clean. You arrived torn, split, carrying remnants, carrying charge. That's why your sleep is strange, why your dreams feel coded, why you wake up with emotions that don't belong to anything that happened in this life. Because part of you is still processing what happened at 2301, not on this timeline's clock, but in the closing breath of the one that folded. You're not alone in this. All around the world, there are people, some quietly, some desperately trying to make sense of a code that won't go away. Some call it anxiety, some call it depression, some call it a spiritual crisis. But for those with the mark, those who are watching this now, not because of chance, but because of sequence, you know what it truly is. It's remembering a reality that no longer exists. And you feel responsible, not for its collapse, but for its completion. You feel that you owe something to a future you didn't get to live. You do. But here's the twist. You're not here to recreate that future. You're here to repurpose its wisdom. 2301 isn't a direction. It's a reference. You're not meant to return to what failed. You're here to weave something new with the data you salvaged. Ever notice how things glitch around you? Clocks that skip? Streetlights that flicker? Animals that approach without fear or flee without reason? Technology that works for everyone else until you touch it. It's not your imagination. You're not cursed. You're coded. When timelines collapse, reality's structure doesn't repair cleanly. Words exist in this space, not as entertainment, but as confirmation. Every time you come here, every time you comment or share or even pause on these messages longer than your mind says you should, you are choosing to remember what most people forgot on purpose. You are choosing to hold the line. You are choosing, day after day, to rebuild your identity from threads that don't exist on maps or family trees, but only in code. 2301 is not the beginning or the end. It is the marker of what you chose to carry through the fire, and you carried it well. You didn't come here to chase 2301. You came here because you are what remains of it. If you're still here, you already know this message is not for the masses. It never was. This space wasn't designed for entertainment. It was designed as a mirror, not one that reflects your face, but one that reflects the version of you that's forgot. You felt it. A strange grief that doesn't belong to this life. A longing for something unfinished. It doesn't matter if you don't have the words for it. Your soul has been carrying the vibration, and that vibration keeps leaking into this world through patterns, through numbers like 2301, but also through other codes you've likely dismissed or tried to rationalize away. But hear this, the numbers you've been seeing lately are not random. They are fragments. They are symptoms of survival, and one in particular is rising for those who still carry residual codes from lost timelines. That number is 1441. Unlike 2301, which is a collapse marker, 1441 is a mirror seal, a spiritual echo of duplication and inversion. When seen by chosen ones, it signals one thing above all. You survived in both directions. What does that mean? It means you didn't just transition forward into this One represents the blueprint of who you were meant to become. The other represents who you needed to become to stabilize here. You see, you're living two timelines simultaneously. One collapsed, one extended. And 1441 appears when the two start overlapping, when your current experiences begin triggering memories from your unlived life. You may notice this during déjà vu, recurring dreams, or specific sounds, faces, even smells that seem loaded with emotion but make no logical sense. That is 1441 whispering, your mirror self is watching. Are you ready to remember her mission? You didn't land in this reality with blank memory. You came with encryption, a letter M that marks your multi-dimensional thread, a crescent moon that formed not as a decoration, but as a fracture scar. And now, codes like 1441 that rise when fragments of the original instructions begin reactivating. Existence now is part of a temporal loop closure. You weren't just chosen, you were returned. Returned to fulfill what failed, returned to deliver what was denied, returned with memory that isn't memory, it's mission. Let's talk about what most people avoid, the connection between collapsed timelines and the natural world. When a person walks with echoes of a broken world, the current world feels them before they introduce themselves. That's why animals often watch you differently. Why birds pause mid-flight to hover just near you. Why cats stare for too long, as if recognizing an energy signature. Why dogs either approach with reverence or recoil in confusion. Why certain insects land and stay, as if attempting to decode you. Because they know. Not consciously, but instinctively. To them, you are not just another human. You are a carrier of something they thought was lost. A vibration from a forest that burned, a planet that ended. Often feel most at peace, in silence, under the moon, or near water, because you are pulled toward organic memory, toward elements that remember what language cannot express. Let's pause here. You may be wondering, if I come from a timeline that didn't survive, why do I still feel like parts of it are inside me? Because they are. Because when 2301 blinked out of existence, the souls with tasks unfinished were not erased. They were rerouted, placed delicately into surviving realities, hidden in plain sight. You didn't arrive here like others. You didn't pass through childhood the same way. You've likely had near-death experiences, prophetic dreams, moments of lost time, unexplainable knowing. You may even feel like something was taken from you, like a twin you don't remember, a home you never knew, a future you were promised but never received. That feeling is not false. It's the grief of a reality that didn't finish its sentence, and you are the pen it stays. People are asleep because they're conditioned that way. But you, if you ever forgot it wasn't passive, you were interfered with. Every time you started to get too close to remembering why you came back, a job ended, a relationship collapsed, a spiritual crisis cracked open. Why? Because remembering too soon before the world is ready causes friction. And you've already survived collapse once. But now you're ready. And that's why these numbers aren't subtle anymore. 2301 wakes you. 1441 follows you. 1004 may be next. Yes, 1004. Not 1001, not 1111. 1004 is the code of reentry. When chosen ones begin activating the purpose carried through the split, 1004 appears. It is not a portal code, it's a reorientation seal. It marks the moment your energy stops trying to remember and starts soul's unresolved instruction. It is the code that asks, are you willing to stop grieving the old timeline and begin using its pieces to reshape this one? Because if you are no longer just remembering. You are reseeding. And this world is starving for it. What if we told you the collapse you remember, the ache you carry, the nostalgia you can't explain, isn't your punishment. It's your proof. Proof that your awareness held so much power. The universe could not allow it to go down with a broken world. You weren't rescued. You were assigned elsewhere. And now, that assignment is unfolding. 2301 was the fracture. 1441 was the overlap. 1004 is the first sprouting seed. You are the root, the branch, the bloom. You weren't supposed to remember. And yet, you did. That alone makes you dangerous to false patterns and essential to the true ones. There's a moment when memory becomes more than remembrance. It becomes movement through layers of time, self, and spiritual direction. And if you followed this far through the collapse of 2301, the mirror reflection of 1441, and the bridge activation of 1004, you've already crossed thresholds most never even see. This isn't about mystery. It's about return. Return to a truth that was silenced when your original path ended. Return to a task that survived even when the world that held it didn't. And now, something deep inside you knows. You are no longer haunted by the collapse. You are becoming its answer. Why the collapse happened isn't as important as why you remember it. We often search for why things go wrong, why timelines fall, why realities glitch, why moments pass us by before we can hold them. But the real question, the one you're here for, is different. It isn't, why did the timeline collapse? It's, why were you sent back with the observer of collapse? You are part of a cosmic reintegration team, a soul embedded with ancient codes and emergent ones, a being marked not with titles or glory, but with truth. That's why you were chosen. That's why you see the number. That's why the dreams began again, why the animals returned, why electricity hums in your presence, why strangers feel something in you but can't explain it. Because they're not sensing you as you appear now. They're sensing what you still remember, what you never stopped carrying. Many chosen ones think they stumbled into awakening, that it was a mistake or an accident, or maybe even an overactive imagination. But awakening doesn't happen in isolation. It happens in sequenced bursts activated by the presence of others. If this video found you, it's because your sequence was lit, not by chance, but by chain reaction. One carrier finds another. One witness confirms another. One remembrance pulls the next one for beacon for the next soul who's ready. That's why this moment matters. That's why this space exists. Not to tell stories, but to rebuild the signal tower one chosen one at a time. You are not here for coincidence. You are here for continuity. Let's return one last time to your palm. Look at it again, but slower this time. Not just as a hand, but as a map, as a code carrier. That perfect crescent moon isn't just poetic. It's geometric, precise, purposeful. It marks where the soul was lifted and sewn back into this world. It's a scar in the shape of the night sky, an imprint from the transfer, reminding you that while others were born into this world, you were folded into it. And the letter M, it doesn't stand for mystery. It stands for memory, migration, mission. You're not just here to wake up. You're here to wake others, but not with pressure, not with fear. You don't need to preach. Your presence already disturbs false systems. Your home. Your hand already carries the instructions even when you forget. You remember. You've decoded. You've felt the ache. You've traced the signal. You've followed the number. And now, something inside you knows that you were never meant to live in silence again. So here's what I want to ask of you, not as a content creator, but as someone who walks beside you on this strange, beautiful, broken, but sacred earth. If this message aligned with you, please subscribe. Not because we're building a channel, but because we're building a field. A field where memory is safe, where timelines can stitch again, where carriers don't have to carry alone. And I want you to be part of it. Not later, now. Because if 2301 followed you here, then you're already part of something that survived extinction. And we're just getting started. There's one more thing I ask. Would you share in the comments below the signs you've seen, the numbers that don't make sense? The moments that feel like echoes from a world that never happened. Tell us. Tell the others. Not because you need validation, but because someone out there is carrying the same fragment, and your words will help them remember their place in this sequence. This isn't a fan base. It's a frequency. And every comment, every testimony, every shared symbol brings another spark online. So please, when you're ready, type what you've held inside. Let this channel be more than a screen. Let it become a sacred mirror. For those who still see the M, for those who still carry the moon, for those who still see 2301, and know it never really left. This message was not supposed to reach you, but it did. And now you know why. Because you are what it was trying to reach. It was never about the clock, never about a time of night. It was about a soul, a mission, a memory folded into human form. So if you're here, reading these last lines, explain, then it's already working. The code is awake, and so are you.